Good evening. I'd like to call a public hearing to order. Please call the roll.
McCaig,
Here.
Wertz,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Rust,
Here.
Trent, Griffin,
Here.
Ware,
Here.
Campbell.
Here. Is there anyone wanting to address the board regarding the proposed FY25 budget? If there's no further business for the public hearing, do I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing? Do I have a first?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
McCaig,
Yes. I get it.
Campbell,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
Wertz,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
Griffin.
Yes.
Public hearing is adjourned. It's now 6:01. I call a regular board meeting to order. Please call the roll.
McCaig,
Here.
Wertz,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
Campbell.
Please like to do the pledge of allegiance, please.
I think it's interesting that we have a hearing and we don't present the budget. Like ours is coming up and I'm like, I have to present, you know?
Now is the time for public comment. Do I have anybody wishing to address the board? Format for the board is that everyone's given 3 minutes to address. If not, we'll move on. Thank you. Oop. Okay. I didn't know where you were.
Enrollment update?
I was trying to make sure that there was no gap in between time.
Wish you'd told me.
I mean, I can make a public comment as well if you would like me to. Okay, thank you. Just giving a quick enrollment update and a few events coming up for everyone. Fall Fest is actually tomorrow, so there is an opportunity for our students to come for engagement, and that is from 12 to 2 p.m. Discover Day is October 14th. High school registration will be complete with high school registration on September 20th. So the enrollment report tonight will include some high school partnership registration. However, we are still enrolling, so that will look different at the end, which we make our final count on September 24th. So just a little background on that. Our current enrolled student count right now, we are at 4,501 students for total enrollment. That is a 17.83% increase from last year. However, taking out the high school partnership numbers, which they are still, again, enrolling up until September 20th, just taking out the non-high school partnership enrolled student count, we are currently at 2,927 students, and that is a 6.48% increase from last year. So just wanted to make the difference with high school partnership and then total students enrolled. Enrolled credit hours currently, we are at a 9.68% increase, and that does include high school partnership. If we take high school partnership out, for enrolled credits, we are at a 3.96% increase. So we are still moving in the right direction, trending upward. However, again, we are still continuing to register our high school partnership students until September 20th. And after that date, after September 24th, we'll have a final head count. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson.
A project update from Hastings and Chivetta.
All right, so Chris, and thank you all.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Chivetta with Hastings and Chivetta Architects. I have a few of my colleagues behind me this evening. I have Lisa LeMasters, who's our project manager and was a former student at Lewis and Clark, and Alan Wolf is our project designer, and he'll be coming up to help present some of the slides tonight and give you the update on the overall project. It's been almost a year since we've updated the board when we finished the program an analysis report for your project. We've now just completed and submitted this week's schematic design. So we'd like to bring you up to speed on changes to the drawings and the plans as well as the budget models this evening. Just to refresh everybody's kind of brief knowledge of the project, we submitted last in May of 23. And we're authorized to proceed in May of 24 with the project. We've done a whole bunch of schematic design workshops in June and July with your campus stakeholder groups and the steering committee. We just submitted, like I mentioned, last Friday, the schematic design report for everything. It is now under Capital Development Board review, and they have about 5 weeks for that review to go through those documents. The overall project schedule, as you know, we're trying to work up as fast as we possibly can, but we've tried to work in with this Capital Development Board review process as well. So you'll see that as you look at those dates and documents, we're really not going to go out to bid for this project until almost February of 26. We are trying to accelerate that schedule on your behalf in order for you to get back into your building as fast as you can, and also so we can avoid some of the escalation in the construction market. Right now, according to our contract, we would look at fall of 28 occupancy of this building. We would like to, if we can get Capital Development Board to agree, to move this schedule up and maybe make it fall of 27 if at all possible, in order to move quick enough in order to do this project. During our program analysis through schematic design phase, we have met with your stakeholders several different times. We confirmed program by department. We confirmed the adjacencies within the building that we wanted to maintain. We've also have begun an intensive study of your existing conditions of these historic buildings. So we've gone through a very formal code analysis. We've looked at the building systems in detail. We've done what we call existing room data sheets, where we actually look at your existing spaces and what they're going to be planned and programmed out to be in the future. We've created a topographical survey for the new entry that goes under the south side of Fobes, which Al will talk about shortly. We've created a BIM model of your building. We've actually laser scanned it, and we've created a 3D dimensional model of it. And we'll show you several concepts exterior wise for the addition to Fobes as well. And we've updated the cost model, which I'll end the presentation on this evening. With that, I'd like Al to come up and talk and walk you through the plans and let you see any changes that we've done. There's been really very minor changes to the plans over the last several months as we began the scope of work and went from there. So I'll be available for questions at the end as well. Al?
Thanks, Chris. So you may recall that one of the main goals to this project was to create a new entry into the main complex, which has currently many entrances, and it's sort of unclear for students to know where to go to come into and become through the enrollment process. So the decision was to create that entrance at Fobes. And so this site plan shows just part of the main complex. This is Fobes here. And there's a circle there now, that circle drop off, and we have to basically create a new circle drop-off that's out farther. So part of the exterior improvements that we're doing to the building, besides improving the exterior of the existing conditions, is a new drop-off, new ADA parking, new sidewalks around this location, improve the handicapped accessibility. Now that ramp that goes up there is not very nice, and a new stairway up into Fobes. So that's the kind of the extent of the exterior. We're also expanding the College for Life, a new sidewalk over to that location as well. But the amount of exterior renovation is purposely scaled back so that it stays within budget. So the floor plans are, again, very large. They get to be a little hard to see when you see them on a plan of this size. But as Chris said earlier, we had to take out renovation of Reed and Wade, so that line represents kind of the edge of our scope. This plan shows the overall concept of everything that we're working on, and I don't expect you to see all the different colorations, but that represents the program elements that are within the building, and we'll get into more detail as we show them up and blow them up a little bit easier to see. The goal, again, was to make enrollment easy, to put it all in Fobes. It doesn't fit on one floor, but we wanted to use the 3 stories of Fobes to make it easy for students to move up and down the building so that everything was in one space. Now enrollment is over here in what was originally the natatorium space, and it's very difficult for students to find their way through. So we'll go in a little bit more detail of what's happening in Fobes, but for the most part, we're just coming in and renovating existing spaces. College for Life will come into this area. It's at grade and it's accessible to them, and that way they can have their kind of a separate entry into their facility. The bookstore, we're talking with the administration about whether or not that function will stay, but for right now we're keeping it in place. Bookstores are changing throughout campuses. A lot of them are going off campus or being served by outside entities, so that's still part of the discussion. But the other parts of the program are just kind of being renovated within the spaces. So every space that's colored and the hallways will get a level of renovation. Specifically, they'll get new mechanical and electrical units because the mechanical systems are very poor. As we go up through the building, again, we're opening up FOBs, and you'll see this area in pink. I want to highlight that. That's academic affairs offices. That's where the offices are very beautiful spaces with stained glass and copper bay windows. In here, we're doing a minimal amount of renovation to these spaces, but the rest of the spaces, not a lot of wall changes, but again, a lot of upgrades to finishes. As we go up through the third and fourth floor, you start to see that the classrooms start to occur in this floor. And again, we're right-sizing classrooms as appropriate based on the needs of the campus, and we'll put in new technology and new systems in those spaces as well. We start to get into some faculty offices as well, and on the fourth floor has the majority office spaces. You'll also see gray spaces at the kind of the ends of the building. These represent mechanical, electrical rooms that'll be distributed throughout the building. Right now, those places don't exist because everything's kind of piped through there. That was part of the problem with the mold, and so we're introducing those spaces throughout the building so that air can be distributed throughout and be more comfortable and be an air distribution system rather than a water distribution system. So, and bring in fresh air, and that's one of the big parts of this component. The fifth floor is mostly faculty offices, and that will remain very much as it is, even to the point that we asked faculty if they wanted to take the closets out of the old dormitory rooms, and they replied that they liked those spaces, so we plan to keep those in. For, again, kind of focusing on FOBs, because this is where our small addition is going. The goal was to create an identifiable entry into FOBs. We wanted to put all the enrollment support spaces in one building. We wanted to create some student lounge spaces. We did interview students, and they said we need a place to hang out. We need a centrally focused place where we can meet. We have a lot of code deficiencies, as you would expect on a building of this age. So again, we're updating parking and accessibility. We're adding new restrooms, and we need another exit out of this building because we only have one staircase. It doesn't meet code currently, while respecting the historical aspects of the building. So again, on this facade of FOBs, we're looking at a lot of different design ideas. We just want to kind of show you where we're at as far as the schematic plans go. This is the outline of FOBs now, and so we're reprogramming. We're basically gut renovating all the spaces in FOBs and putting in enrollment. So when you come inside, enrollment is off to the left immediately. The first part you go to. We have high school enrollment, high school partnership over here. This represents kind of the large lounge and possibly a food service, possibly a spirit store, so that you make kind of this centrally student-focused area. We have a new staircase, and that existing staircase that runs up through FOBs, which has been encased in drywall, we'd open up so that, again, we can bring people and students directly up and down through the facility in an easy manner. On the second floor, we have financial aid and bursar's office right across from each other. And then on the upper floor, we have placement, which is testing essentially, and then access and accommodations. And the fourth floor FOBs, which is currently an attic space, will become mechanical spaces. Again, looking at the site plan, just kind of for reference, this is the addition. So you can see as part of the overall size of the main complex, this is a very small addition. We looked at a lot of different concepts, so we're still studying. We're working with our historical context architect to make sure that we're working within SHPO guidelines. So we're in the process of looking at what's appropriate. We think using the materials that are on campus, stone, maybe copper. Copper is expensive, so we'll have to limit that, but not probably the rough cut stone, but smooth stone. So we're looking at buildings that have simple punched openings with a 2-story kind of entrance and a canopy across. We're looking at to see what would look like to have the simple roof put on each end, and then kind of from the other direction. So these are the same concept. These are the same concept with the roof. And we're looking at what happens if we introduce a more modern ideology to it by getting some larger windows in it so that it doesn't compete with the existing architecture that's there. So it identifies as this is new. It's not competing with the historical nature of the rest of campus. And then we're looking at also what if we could afford to sheathe it in that copper that you see, not just in the main complex, but in other parts of campus. And so this is kind of making it all copper so that it's kind of, again, it's a contrast between old and new. But if we can't afford all that, what if we did some sort of combination of both of those? Chris will address budgets.
So as I mentioned before, we're just in the schematic design phase. So as we created cost models for your project, we tried to look at all the different options. So we actually priced these out as 3 separate options. The concept 1 is the base option. You'll see concept 2 and concept 3. The difference between those 2 numbers, the 345 is in today's dollars, the 399 would be in escalated dollars out to the future. So we're trying to show you today dollars versus future dollars overall. Still open for discussion, still have to be reviewed by Capital Development Board, has to be reviewed by campus for your direction as well, and well as working with our historical consultant to make sure that we're going to meet the SHPO requirements in the state of Illinois. I'm going to go through the budget model quickly, and then we can open it up for questions if you have any. I apologize for the evening eye test here, but we are working with the Capital Development Board forms. So an important line item to look at is you're about $40.9 million here for the overall building. Capital Development Boards ask us to add a 10% contingency to that number. Then they add their construction administration fee to it. So if you start looking at the various columnar totals as we go through this, you'll see that it's $42.18 to $46 million overall. And then here are those 2 options and alternates that I just showed you for the exterior signage. When we put this all together in the Capital Development Board form, this is a really eye test, I apologize. Our CDB approved funding for construction budget is about $44.5 million. The design budget we have to design to is at 90% or 10% less, is about $40.073 million. If you remember my number I gave you before, it was about $40.9 million, so we are close to budget. But then we have to take into consideration escalation, the additional impacts that we've had since the PA phase overall. Right now on our budget model, Brian, can you by any chance zoom into that corner for me down there, by any chance? Would that be possible on my laptop? I apologize. Can I step away from the microphone for just a second? That might be just a little easier to read. Your total project funding is about $50 million overall. Right now, our total budget, the way the CDB would calculate it, we're about $53.5 million. We are over budget, but I will tell you that these budget models that we've developed today are based upon quantity takeoffs. We're conceptual in the manner, we're not actually detailed yet to a large extent, but in your cost model, we have 2.5 years of escalation built in at 6%. So there's almost $5.5 million of escalation cost built into this overall project at the current time. So we're trying to be really respectful of the current market conditions. The good news is that it's dropped over the last several years from what it was back in 22 and 23, but we're trying to be respectful of what it might be when we bid this project out the midpoint of construction. So yes, the project team has work to do. We have to make sure these costs are appropriate and adequate as we go along. We will update these cost models at our next major design phase, which is the design development phase, and go from there. So I'm saying I'm delivering a project over budget, but I think we have the room and the capacity to get the project back into budget as we move forward and make sure that we maintain your budget funding limitation of $50 million and deliver an exceptional renovation of these 3 building complexes to your campus. So with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions you might have for Al or myself, and we can talk about our next steps. Yes?
How old is Phobes, the Phobes building, you know?
Phobes was built in, it was the early 1900s. I want to say it was pre-1920, if I'm not mistaken.
The main complex was 1890, and Phobes was after that. I would say early 1900s.
Yes.
Just wondered.
Did I see a 5% contingency? Is that what you had built in?
I'm sorry?
Was it a 5% contingency? Is that what you said? I missed that.
No, it was a 10% contingency that's required by Capital Development Board.
Okay, so you built in escalation, but then the contingency is like when you run into, if you run into like asbestos or something like that, or whatever it could be.
Unknown
All
conditions.
conditions that you are, okay.
Correct.
And 10%, is that the standard?
That's the standard by Capital Development Board requirements.
Okay, so they dictate that.
Yes, they give us this design to budget. Let me back up one slide if you don't mind. They established the construction budget at $44 million, but we have a design budget of $40 million. So they actually ask us to build 10% contingency into those numbers. So when bids come in, we have a 10% swing between high and low. So they ask us to design to $40 million, but we really have $44 million to do that.
Okay, thank you.
And we also have contingency. I know it's really hard to see. We also have contingency and soft costs built into this category too that would be what I call Lewis and Clark controlled for your campus for unknown conditions.
Okay.
What was the fee that we have to pay the Capital Development Board? I saw it, but I forget what it was. Or 40,000?
No, sir. The fee that you'll pay to the Capital Development Board is 3% of the overall construction cost, and that number is about $1.2 million.
I couldn't see that, okay. So that's what we're paying them to slow us down.
I'd rather not comment on that if you don't mind.
So, can you just quickly say, how did you get from the 40,000 to the 53? I can't see how the 53 is compared to the 50 there.
So you're adding this line item here, which is about 8.4 million, to this $45 million number there. That's how you get to the 53.
And the
number.
8.4 million is,
What we would call soft costs
Okay.
and other things that are outside the construction budget or the contractor bid.
okay.
Can we have a copy of this?
We can provide copies to everybody. That's not a problem at all.
I think it'd be good if we had copies, something we could look at.
Yes, I apologize for the small text.
No,
on the side.
that's right.
Sorry, I can't stay silent. So, so you said that you're supposed to design to budget, correct? So, what kind of fees are we going to incur for you to get back in budget?
We don't get adjustments in our fees at all. We signed a contract to get this back into the $40 million range by our contract, so we will work through that process as a part of our normal project requirements for delivery.
So we shouldn't incur any additional fees from you to get the project back in budget?
That's correct.
Okay. What steps are you going to take to get it back in budget? Because in my experience, going from SD to DD, you rarely get back in budget. Usually things are added.
Yes, and we tried to point out things that had been added from programming to schematic design. So we're looking at all the most important systems in the building. Our mechanical, electrical costs went up because we realized after the analysis of the building that we needed a new chiller that wasn't anticipated originally. We also looked at the age of the boilers. So we're trying to balance these things out very carefully to bring it back into budget. There's not a lot of architectural finishes here. There's a lot of demolition work and new ceilings, but a lot of it is really a mechanically, electrically, plumbing intensive renovation of the building. So we're trying to be very conservative and we're trying to be very appropriate in where we're applying architectural finishes around the building. So we're not gutting, you might say,
Right.
Baldwin and Caldwell like we're doing Phobes.
But then you spend time proposing to clad an exterior addition with copper at what we know will be at least a $500,000 add to the project.
That is correct.
Is that a good use of your time?
We had to provide 3 options to the Capital Development Board for review, and then we have to revise these concepts to be in budget at the same time. So we developed those concepts and models to respond to the requirement of turning in 3 different options to our design concept of new construction. The existing building, we're not really making any major changes to. We're moving departments around, but the new construction of the addition to Phobes is the one area we focused on to provide 3 options to that. So I don't think we're going to be to afford the copper option. What we'd like to do is incorporate some copper elements to it to represent some of the design elements that you have around your campus, but maybe being a little more pragmatic and judicial on them.
I agree. I would not spend any more time developing the copper option.
Okay, thank you.
So how does that process occur, those concepts? Who decides which concept's best?
I think we still have to have a formal meetings with campus to have that discussion with
So
camp.
a committee, that
Yes.
building committee or whoever it is, they look at it. So
Yes.
I like concept 1 for anybody on that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chris.
Okay, thank you all very much. Appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
The omnibus agenda.
The omnibus agenda is presented for a vote. Is there anybody in any item the board would like to be held out and voted separately? Yes. What would that be? H. H. Anything else? I'd like to have a motion to approve the omnibus agenda except item H. I have a motion?
Motion.
A second? Any discussion? Please call the roll.
McCaig,
Yes.
Johnson, Campbell, Wertz,
Yes?
Rust,
Yes.
Trent, Griffin,
Yes.
Ware.
Yes.
I'd like to have a motion to approve item H of the omnibus agenda. Second?
Second.
Anybody? Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes. This has been discussed before. Kevin's brought it up a couple times. And I don't know the answer. I think it's a bad look. Like the first item on bid information, I think it's kind of hard to read. Yeah, that was the one for the mannequin simulator. No, I got it now. And I see 3 no quotes and then just the one bidder. I know that there's a myriad of problems with this from time to time. They don't answer all sorts of issues, but I think, and certainly not a trust issue. It's a bad look issue, I think, for people that see this and see 3 no quotes and then this one gets it. I'm wondering if, when this occurs, if the answer is, for instance, the last one is World Point, I think, if a call, and maybe a call has been made, if a call can be made and they can orally decline for whatever reason, they don't have it or they don't want the business or whatever, instead of saying no quote, we could say CEO or whomever declined to bid. Something to clarify it a little better.
In this case, there's 2 companies that usually bid, Gamard and Layerdal, and we have mannequins of both. The coordinator of nursing was speaking to both of them, spoke to the person from Layerdal. They sent an early quote of this is about what what it costs. But then when we put out the formal bid, we didn't get a bid from them. And so there was some concern about maybe there was some confusion, but they've bid on other things before. So I'm not sure why they sent us a early quote of this is what it, what the cost would be, but then never put in a formal bid.
I don't know the answer, Sue.
Yeah, it's frustrating. No, because
it's throughout all bids.
Yeah.
But I just think that we need to come up with a better answer to this other than just no quote.
Right, or
so that we know that there
or-
was some follow-up and they declined for whatever reason.
Okay.
I mean, I'm open to suggestions here, but I think it's a bad look.
Yep.
Sue, is it because we're a government agency and they don't want to take the time to fill out all the paperwork? I mean, we see this a lot on everything from asphalt to nursing stuff, no quote, and like I'm with Larry, and I'd like to see they decline to quote or some explanation why we're not seeing quotes. And I deal with this in my business too, because some people are so shorthanded or they don't have people, they just don't quote anymore. So it's just the way it is. But I agree with Larry that we need to spell it out, say they decline quote, you know.
Okay.
And just so.
Yeah, just so that we have some
Yeah,
kind of better
so that we know
record that
that
we
this-
really tried, spoke to them, and then this is what happened.
Yeah.
The only other thing I can think about is that the delivery time, because this is grant funded. And so it has to be in by the end of the year, or else it rolls to the next year of the grant. And so there could be some issue with how quickly they could get to us. But we'll follow up from now on and just ask why you didn't send
Yeah,
a
maybe
formal
we're
bid.
missing something, but I
Yeah,
don't think we are.
yeah.
I think that's just the way it is, the way of the world right now. But
Yep, thanks.
any more discussion? Not, please call for the vote. Call the roll, please.
McCaig,
Yes.
Campbell. Griffin,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
Wertz,
Yes?
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Trent.
Under action items, the 2024 Emerson Excellence in Teaching Award to Paula Kelso.
Congratulations, Paula. Yeah, yes.
We'd like to pass as a motion, don't we, first? Just a suggestion. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion. Second.
Second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
McCaig,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Campbell. Wertz,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Trent.
Congratulations, Paula.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm very, very honored. And the outpouring of love from my colleagues and my students since I have won the award is just heartwarming. Yeah. So I love what I teach and I love my students. So I'm very honored. Thank you.
Resolution 24-11, the Wood River Refinery Real Property Tax Assessment Settlement Agreement for the levy years 2024 through 2027.
Do I have a motion to approve? Second? Any discussion? Please call the roll.
McCaig,
Yes.
Trent. Campbell. Wertz.
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Ware.
Yes.
The FY25 budget.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second? Second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
McCaig,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Trent. Griffin,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
Campbell. Wertz,
Yes.
Rust.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
New Personnel Policy 413, Position Search Waivers.
Do I have a motion to approve? Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
McCaig,
Yes.
Campbell. Griffin,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
Wertz,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Trent.
Motion passes.
Personnel Policy 301, Team Member Position Change.
Do I have a motion to approve? Second? Have a discussion? Please call the roll.
McCaig,
Yes.
Campbell. Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Trent. Griffin,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
Wertz.
Yes.
Amendment to Board Policy 510, travel.
Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. The, and I don't mean to pick on Dr. Traska, but he does a lot of official business in the Alton Godfrey area. And if, the way I read this policy, that wouldn't be reimbursable. And it wouldn't be right for it not to be reimbursable, I would say, in most cases anyway. So I wonder if maybe the policy needs to be revised, or is it something that's in your contract that covers it?
Yeah, I think in my contract, it covers it, and we had this discussion on campus just today, and so, you know, that paragraph has been in there that you're referring to since 2017, and so anything, obviously, business-related meeting with, you know, local business owner or a community member, which I often do. Sometimes I might pick up lunch, sometimes they do. Those are reimbursable. And so nothing really changes that. This is really designed for if, you know, somebody's job requires them to be in an environment, you know, where it might be away from campus, but that's where their job is. And, you know, they can't get reimbursed for lunch, you know. It's like if I'm going to work on a different campus, but just work, I can't like say, hey, I'm not in my normal office, so I want to charge the lunch to the college. So, I mean, we don't feel, and I know Gabe at the HR level, Mary, Maya, myself, you know, all agree that there isn't a discrepancy in it, and it shouldn't affect my reimbursement.
Do you have your contract in front of you by chance?
I don't.
I mean,
No.
but it's basically
So I
saying-
get, yeah, in my contract, I get an allowance, which I don't get reimbursed for mileage
Right.
in the area, and then anything that I travel outside of 60 miles, I do, but there's no mention of food, but it hasn't been an issue since I've been here, and this language is reflective of, I mean, the language has been in place since 17, so I don't know, Matt, if you have perspective on it. Maybe we need to put something in my contract. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not worried about it, but.
Well,
yes.
I mean, are you, so you feel like you're excluded from any part of this policy? No.
I mean, I don't want to say I'm excluded from policy. I mean, I have to follow policy, but.
Well, I mean, just I'll
it
use an example. Let's say you went on a trip to somewhere, Chicago.
Right.
And the room was $560 a night. Well,
I
that would be
wouldn't,
way out of policy.
I would never stay there, but good
Well, I mean,
point,
way
yeah.
out of policy.
Right.
I'm just using a ridiculous example, but if that, you know, that's out of policy, that's outside of this policy.
Yeah,
But from what you're saying, it would be covered by your contract.
yeah. But on the record, I would never stay in a hotel for $560. I'd sleep
Well-
in my car.
Well, we can't really design policies
So
around an individual
we
person. We
could,
have to
I
design
mean-
policies around
Right.
common sense.
So would it be reasonable to approve the policy with perhaps a side letter in my contract that you all can agree to that, you know, obviously Dr. Traska's business within the county is reimbursable, something like that, you know, with
I would think so,
legal
and-
advice, you know?
and I mean, maybe I could be, you know, obviously wrong, but I mean, I would think that some people that report to you are also on
Sure.
official business
Yeah.
in the area, and they're getting
Yeah.
reimbursed,
Yeah.
right?
I mean,
So-
if somebody were to take stakeholders to lunch, they would be reimbursed for it, absolutely.
Yeah, so
If
I
it
mean,
related to college
it's not
business.
just you being outside of the
Right.
policy, it would be others in the organization.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
I
I'm-
definitely think that something needs to be rewritten in
Okay,
this
sure.
travel policy.
So, you know, just in previous experience, I mean, could we approve the policy with an amendment made with board approval and then put it into action at that point? So in other words, let's add a sentence that clearly identifies that, you know, we just have to define, is it just certain leaders or leadership in general? Because I think it happens outside the scope of just myself and the exec team. I mean, where,
yeah, I mean, I
you
don't
know, I mean, you know, I know of other managers who've been reimbursed for lunch with stakeholders that had to do with college business. But we can put something in the contract that assures that those team members would be reimbursed for college business within, you know, the area. And as long as legal would agree with that, we can.
Yeah, I think that whole, that
Yeah,
concept
we can
needs
work
to
on
be
it.
examined and
Sure.
the policy,
That
policy
particular
510
policy.
rewritten to cover that.
All right, fair enough.
So,
Matt,
I do have
yeah.
another thing that concerns me about the policy is using these per diem rates. These per diem rates are rather low, if you ask me.
So, yeah, so we're not using the per diem rates for the hotels anymore. We're keeping those the same. You've got an updated version on that because after further review, and this is the dynamic nature of policy. I mean, we don't want to get into the situation where, well, we looked at that back in '02. I mean, we want to continue to get feedback and perspective. And part of the policies that is being changed is because there have been limitations from team members in travel. There have been a lot of out-of-pocket expenses because we had a more recent one where team members traveled to a city that was pretty expensive and $50 didn't go half the distance. And so in order for them to cover their meals, they basically had to pay out of their own pocket. This has happened when students have traveled as well with team members. So the per diem, actually, this platform we discovered is used by other schools. One of them is SWIC, who's close to us, and we understand that it works very well for them, and they're able to create a sense of equity across the campus. So if I'm going to a city that's more expensive, I'm going to get reimbursed based on that city. We did a little bit of research to figure out how we want to do this. We also thought, do we follow the state rates? Do we pull something out of the bag based on some of our own data analysis? And this seemed to be the most practical approach to keeping it sort of consistent and creating sort of a standard across the board. But and plus, as we move toward a different budget philosophy related to zero-based budgeting, this is really going to be around planning. So if a manager has a team member who wants to travel to, Miami for a conference, they'll look at those rates in that area, they'll budget accordingly, and there should be very few, issues with it. You know what I mean? So,
well, are the per diem rates, I'm talking about for meals, per diem rates for meals, are these
based on
like
location.
Maximums, or let's say, for instance, you spend more than...
No, if you spend more than that, you pay out of pocket. So this is maximum for the day.
Now, I'm just going to take your expense report that you submitted today as an example, and I'm not, it has...
Exhibit A, Ken's travel.
It could be Joe Blow, it doesn't matter,
That's fine,
okay?
yeah.
But, I mean, you did a lunch for 4 in Godfrey, basically $100.
Yeah.
Well, that's way over $15 each.
Yeah.
The next day, actually a couple days later, you took out a community member, for lunch, $36.71, very reasonable.
Yeah.
But it's still over $30.
Yeah.
Still over $30. The next day, you were within 2 people who went.
So those, those are for individual. Like, so when you know what I mean? So
no, I don't know what you mean. Go ahead.
So lunch for right now, it's $50 a day. So in theory, if you didn't have breakfast or lunch and you had a dinner that was $40, that's still covered. But right now, so you know what I mean?
If you're out of town, but not if it's just a one-day trip.
It's that's, I don't know. I mean, that's how, and if it's over that and you have more than one person, that per diem would be for each person. But since you're taking a guest out, I guess there's a little bit of a nuance in that policy. I mean, I've never had issues when I bring 5 or 6 people out and it might be $100. I'm not saying to the mayor, hey, I got to keep you to $12, you know, I mean, I can't do that, you know, because, you know, and here's why. I have this board member who's asking questions, you know, I don't want to do that, you know.
No,
I'm being sarcastic, Kevin,
Well,
you know.
but for the sake of the people that have to process it, for the sake of the people that have to process expense reports, you have to have
Yeah.
a policy that's clear and understandable and applicable. And I don't see how this per diem is it works out that way. I mean, these are all just, I mean, you can't say the daily total of $59 covers a breakfast. That's for the day, a whole day, not for, so.
I mean, I think the policy works for the college. I mean, the per diems are really designed for out of state, out of town travel for individuals. So you'll get, you know, I'm going to Chicago, you get $71, and that's your per diem for the day, and you can use that as you wish. I think, you know, when you're taking guests out there, I mean, it has to be reasonable. You know, you're not going to take 3 people out and spend $400 on a lunch for 3 people. I mean, you keep the policy in mind, and now if I'm, I mean, I would never have a situation where I'm by myself locally and I'm going to put a lunch in. So that's the thing. That doesn't. I mean, it's more than two or more people that I'm meeting with. I don't know. I don't know where the circle ends on this one. I mean, if there's some. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Gabe, any perspective as the expert on policy here at Lewis and Clark?
I'd like to hear from Mary on this, because it seems like it's going to be hard for you guys to process expense reports.
No, yeah. Yeah, I mean, part of having the per diem too, in the receipt situation, is actually, my argument is to simplify it for Mary. I mean, there's a lot of effort that goes in right now to oversee receipts and track things, and then if somebody loses one and it gets complicated, there's a minimum that you'll get if you don't have a receipt. And you know, sometimes people, now they're getting better, there's digital receipts, but there are places that don't give you an itemized receipt, and then you're like, hey, can you write something down? And I've been in a situation where, like, sir, we can't do that. So if I write it down, hey, I could add an extra, you know, hot dog, you know? So it gets kind of complicated in that regard. Maya was part of helping design some of this and had actually quite a bit of feedback that helped shape the new policy. So, yeah, Maya, come on up.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding the question, because at first you were saying that the per diem was not enough per day.
Right.
And then.
Right, that's what I say. It's not enough per day. It's not enough per meal.
Okay. So the GSA rates vary from city to city or county to county, depending on where you are. And.
Well, I used Edwardsville as an example. Okay, the Alton Godfrey, and as to represent the Alton Godfrey area. The per diem rate for meals is the same as it is the same in Springfield. It's the same in Monticello, which I don't know where that is, but I mean it's not the same for Chicago. I'm sure it's not the same for Chicago.
Right.
But if somebody is on a one-day trip and they eat breakfast or lunch, that's the only meal they have, and they're not allowed $59 for the day. They're only allowed $15 for the day.
No, they're allowed $59 for the day. They can break it up however they choose.
Not if they're not gone overnight.
They're reimbursed per day. So if there's a trip and you get $59 for that day. Right now, it's $50 for the day.
But the trip has to include three meal times.
Yeah.
It has to be interpreted that way. Otherwise, why would they put 3 different meals here?
So that's
well, the 3 different meal breakdown is it's really just like a suggested amount for each meal, right? Really, it's the main full day amount, which includes also incidental amounts as well, which would be like tax and tipping. That's what you have for the day. You can break it down however you want, which was sort of the purpose of doing that was to aid in getting rid of receipts as well. As Dr. Taraska said, some
Here's
places
what I
don't
would-
do them.
Here's what I would expect to see, for example, on an expense report, where somebody leaves at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they go to Springfield, they stay overnight, they have dinner in Springfield, they have breakfast in Springfield, and then they come back at 10 o'clock. So they've been gone for 2 meals. Dinner, $26, breakfast, $13.
And the reason
The
it wasn't
$59 is
done
irrelevant.
that way was to aid in simplifying the process. Otherwise, we would be doing it like every meal by whatever time each person leaves, which is quite a bit to track.
Yeah, we talked about this very specific issue where, you know, I mean, you know, like what time people leave and what if they leave earlier than they were planning to and they only got pre-approval for 1 meal. And so we just said, like, and this is not uncommon where, you know, you get a per diem per day to travel, you know, and this is all also within budget. So, you know, people have to plan ahead and say, okay, if I'm going to a conference in X city, this is the per diem. I mean, some people may not take the day they're traveling if they're taking a late flight. You know, maybe they don't take it, but they would be allowed to take it based on the policy. And that's just something we decided as an institution that it would be much more practical to manage that process than to micromanage when people left, when they got back, and maybe they were running late. And it's like, oh, well, you know, I left a little bit after lunch. Can I still have lunch? It was 12:30. And then somebody's like, well, I don't know. I left at 3, but I always take a late lunch. So can I still take the lunch? And I always have a late dinner, which, by the way, a lot of people eat late dinner. So, I mean, it just got, and we literally had these conversations. And, you know, and I said, let's keep it simple, per diem. We're not the only college that does this. Most colleges give per diems, and it eliminates confusion. It eliminates any issue where people are like, hey, I didn't get enough for the travel. That puts more burden on Mary and her team. So, I mean, we were hoping this would simplify it. We did make a little bit of a pivot around hotels because we realized, and this is just the dynamic nature of this, that was a little bit more complicated. Like, we don't want to micromanage the team. We want to trust our budget managers. We want to trust our people to leverage their budgets in the most responsible way, and that's sort of been the philosophy. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
Also,
you keep up bringing up micromanaging, but people have been used to providing receipts.
right.
Per meal.
And we were running into a
But-
lot of issues with.
Also, with the way that the policy is currently written, you get $50 a day regardless. So that's not something new, doing the full day per diem. That's how it's always been done. You just had to turn in receipts. So it's, if you were doing the current policy and you left at noon, you would still get what you requested. Like, you don't break it down and say, I'm leaving
Like, you
at
can
noon,
just
so
spend
I only
50
need
for dinner,
$25.
You know what I mean? Like, you could, because you left late and you are really hungry, and so you have a dinner that's $47. You know, and so you put a receipt in for dinner for $47, but now if you put a receipt for $47 for dinner, $10 for breakfast, and $12 for lunch, Mary and her team would edit that, and you would only get $47 because the maximum that you put a receipt in was $47. If you traveled and lost all of your receipts, which I have done, you will get $20, which is the minimum reimbursable amount without a receipt. We've decided, let's keep it simple, no receipts, reimbursed on the per diems based on where you're located. This is a system that other colleges in the state are using, and based on our conversations with them, it works wonderfully.
Can I jump in?
Yep.
I'm just going to say, Kevin, I don't disagree with the amounts. They do sound low, but I think that the team has done their homework. I think it will require people to be a little bit more diligent about their spending. I've had to live in travel policies in the past where I had a per diem, and you figure out how to make it work. I think it'll just require folks to be a little bit more aware of how much money they're spending, and if they choose to have a steak dinner, they know that they'll have to make up the difference on their own. I think it simplifies things significantly. I think that we've discussed this enough, and I'm going to ask Chairman Wirtz if we can call to a vote.
I agree, we've discussed this enough. I'd like to please call for a vote. Please call the roll.
Sorry.
McCaig,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
Campbell, Wirtz,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
No.
Trent,
Approval of an early retirement incentive program for college full-time faculty team members.
Do I have a motion to approve, please? Second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yes. Just to frame it for the board, sorry, discussion. You had discussion?
no,
Oh.
no, go right ahead.
Oh. I was okay with the timing this time, so I thought I was. Okay. So the expectation with the ERI is we will send an email out within the next 48 hours to the campus. There was an awareness on campus that this was at the board meeting tonight, so thank you for considering it. Once that goes out, in any moment, folks may choose to submit, essentially their request to take the early retirement incentive. The executive team, human resources, will be evaluating those, I'll call them applications as they come in, and considering the ERI against, the needs in those departments, the needs on campus. Once all of the ERIs come in, we have a deadline, I think it's November 17th. We've given about 50 days, which is a little bit higher than what's required for us to evaluate. As they're coming in, we're basically going to assess. Built into the fiscal year 25 budget is $500,000 for ERI. I mean, we feel confident that we'll be able to stay within that $500,000. When the board receives the recommendation in December, there will be a clear, essentially, picture of here's what we paid out in the ERI, here's what we're anticipating to reinvest in positions that we've decided are critical to fill, and here's what we're not going to fill, and here's the savings. So the board will be able to see very clearly, essentially, what the return on investment would be on the ERI. So hopefully that clarifies any questions. I know there may have been a few questions, and at least one of you reached out earlier. So we're excited about this. This is part of, right-sizing the institution a little bit more, but also being very thoughtful in where we need to reinvest and being very practical where we don't. So thank you for your consideration.
Please call the roll.
McCaig,
Yes.
Campbell, Wertz,
Yes?
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Trent, Griffin,
Yes.
Ware.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Approval of an early retirement incentive program for college full-time staff team members.
Do I have a motion to approve? Second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
McCaig,
Yes.
Campbell, Johnson, Rust,
Yes.
Trent, Griffin,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
Wertz.
Yes.
Lease agreement with Jersey Community Unit School District Number 100.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I was just wondering why it started July 1st, so how
Yeah,
come-
so I was going to make a comment. I do want to thank Jersey Community Unit School District 100 for being very flexible. So what's not in here, and I chose not to put it in here, last year there was no rent. Dr. Tuttle and I talked, and he determined that we don't have to pay the rent. Part of that was because we were moving. They were doing some renovation, and we moved our office. Originally, there was going to be a reduced fee, and he and I talked and agreed not to. So this year, we're going to keep the rate as it typically was, and then next year we'll go down to $12,000, and then we're probably going to stay right within that range year over year. I don't know if that answers your question, but essentially, that location is pretty popular in Jerseyville, and we're just happy with that partnership with them.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the lease. I was just wondering why we're approving it in September when it started in July, but maybe they had to approve it or.
Yeah, it's just, it's the chain of approvals and that thing. And so now in the future, actually, it's funny you say that because we did talk about that, and we just, we'll get it sooner in the future.
It seems like the board is good at anticipating what you
Yeah.
talk about in
Yeah.
all these different areas.
Yeah, thanks, Julie.
Informational items? Oh,
Please call the roll.
McCaig,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Trent. Griffin,
Yes.
Campbell, Wertz.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
information items. Dr. Traska, is there anything you would like to highlight?
Just, we always like to highlight the recognition report unless there's other questions on the other items, but Dr. Artis?
Well, I will try
Yes.
to be quick, but I do want to acknowledge, I think Debbie and Cody and Val and Maya, oh my gosh, sorry, are all in the room tonight. And so we're changing up the recognition report a little bit. As you can see, I think there's over 20 team members who are being recognized, but KD3 had an initiative that I believe was actually Corey Zittman's feedback from attending a conference at Clemson, where they hand out tokens on their campus as a way to recognize their team members. So KD3 has decided, let's tie, our valuing of our team members to those core values. So as you'll see on page 249 in your book, we do have those tokens. The goal is to have all of our team members be recognized for exhibiting those core values throughout the year, and you can read all of the great examples for those who have been recognized already this month. And then at the end of the year, during the State of Trailblazer Nation, they have designed a really cool commemorative gold coin that anyone who has all 6 tokens representing those core values will receive on that day from Dr. Traska. So again, we want to continue recognizing our team members, but we're all pretty amazing, and that's why it's getting time consuming and it's taking up more pages. So I hope you'll just join me at some point reading those and congratulating those team members. HR will deliver those tokens after this meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Thanks, Dr. Artis. Leadership team reports.
Yeah, so that's me. So I do want to ask Tom to come up briefly. I had asked him during my report just to give an update on our drone program that we recently launched, and just that we launched, no pun intended, but he's going to talk a little bit about that.
Good evening. If you were lucky enough to be on campus this weekend, like I was, you would have seen some unmanned aerial vehicles, otherwise known as drones, in the air. So we held our first pilot drone training sessions this weekend, 8 hours on Saturday, 8 hours on Sunday. We had 12 diverse participants. This particular training, our first, was geared toward first responders, but it was not limited to first responders. So we had, of those 12, 4 area firefighters. We had 2 deputy sheriffs. And then we had an assortment of other people. We even had our craziest, our wildest participant was a member of NASA from Florida.
And they came up here
just for this. And he'll have to drive up or fly up in 2 weekends because it's a 2-weekend program. We spread it out with a weekend in between for relaxation. So he'll come back and everybody else on September 28th, 29th. So this particular program was funded through a grant from ICCB, Workforce Training Initiative. And so that allowed us to purchase the drones that we're using in training. And the featured drone of this particular training it's called a Mavic 3 Enterprise Thermal. So it has a thermal camera on it. So for instance, if Dr. T ever has a really bad day and he just takes off running through the woods, there are now 11 people in the area that can find him.
It happens every Tuesday, just so you know.
But the first weekend went incredibly well. And I was supposed to bring up some testimonials. So one of them is from the Alton Fire Department, who specifically has asked when this training is over that the drone pilot instructor make a personal visit to the fire department and give advice as to what drone should be purchased by the fire department. They are that ready to move on. And then this other testimony is from our NASA employee from St. Augustine, Florida. He said, "This class is wonderful." So this program is going to grow. Right now, it's a non-credit situation. We envision more trainings coming up, all kinds of areas that we can apply this to. We eventually want to turn it into a credit-bearing program, but the list goes on and on. So we can connect this to refineries in our P-TECH program, insurance, real estate, criminal justice, restoration ecology, architecture, solar, geospace. So there's all kinds of things that we can apply to this program too. So we're very excited.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tom. That was wonderful. Just a couple other things. Today at our all-team meeting, Hastings and Shavetta actually gave an abbreviated version of this presentation, but also Kyle Kniepman, who's our healthcare consultant, spent about a half hour with the team. It was our first all-team meeting focused on healthcare. As you know, in December, we're going to bring the board kind of an assessment of where we want to go in terms of additional changes to not only make Lewis and Clark a bit more competitive, but to help control costs a little bit more with healthcare without affecting the quality of care that we currently provide. So a lot of work going on around that. In addition to that, you know, I've alluded to this, and I want to sort of make the public announcement on this, but you know, there is a lot of work going on campus right now, obviously, and there always is, but in particular, and I know the board received a presentation on this a couple of board meetings ago, and Chris Palda put together a deferred maintenance sort of roster of projects. There are a number of projects that have been approved by the board, but don't have the funding associated with them. At the end of this year, the PHS levy tax expires, and you know we're working on a really, I think, a great presentation for the board. I'll be probably sending you all email on Tuesday or Monday or Tuesday of next week, so look out for that. That begins to frame really the case that we need to extend this tax. It will allow us to address about $12 to $15 million worth of absolutely critical projects that mostly include roofs, HVAC across our buildings. I will be the first to admit that we have a remarkable maintenance team, a great network of team members on this campus, but it is really, really difficult to keep up with these projects when we have continuous emergencies and other crises that occur that for the most part relate to environment or relate to just projects that were put off a little bit too long. So there's going to be a pretty comprehensive proposal, but I think that when the board sees this, I feel you'll look at this favorably. The issue continues to become, we have such an awesome opportunity to get to sort of that proverbial next level as an institution, but the distractions of all these environmental issues and the deferred maintenance and the occasional pipe burst and whatever it might be. I mean, we've had some pretty disastrous things happen in the last few years. I'm kind of making the sort of case that this is really, really important to the institution in order for us to move forward. Otherwise, we're going to continue to sort of have this sort of schizophrenic approach to trying to just put out fires, and our eye begins to being taken off of the focus of serving students and continuing to try to see good things happen around enrollment and access and agility and flexibility and all the things that we should be focused on. So thank you for that. The next 3 or 4 days, I've got some travel planned. Tomorrow, Debbie Edelman and I head to Denver for an alumni engagement opportunity, as well as a program that's going to help us begin to tee up a capital campaign that we're going to softly launch. The plan is in the spring. This is in part related to the main complex, but in a broader sense, looking at creating some opportunities related to endowments, et cetera, to support really the longevity of the campus in different ways. I get back from that, and then I travel with one of our local superintendents, Todd Dugan. He's invited Lewis and Clark to be part of a P through 20 initiative in the region, so Lewis and Clark is proud to be part of that. That is supported through an organization in Texas, so we'll be there for a couple of days in Abilene, Texas, working with leaders across the country to really look at, again, trying to look at ways to improve that link between community colleges and K through 12. And then Mary and I, it was interesting, the conversation around bidding. Mary and I are both on a committee at the state level for business enterprise that really relates to bidding and how do we create more transparency and more equity and more consistency around bidding, because we are not the only school that might put out a bid, especially in some of our rural communities, and nobody will bid, or they'll get a bid, that's completely out of whack, and so it ends up creating issues within that environment as well. So, just again, we're off to a good start at Lewis and Clark this semester. I've kept the board informed about some of the other things going on, and we're just looking forward to continuing to sort of make progress one step at a time. But thank you all again, and I know the team here is just continuing to put their head down and focus on doing good work, so I want to thank them as well for everything. With that being said, thank you all. Thank you, Kevin, for your fantastic questions, as always. Appreciate them. I mean that, and thank you all for your continued support.
Any other questions? I'd like to adjourn the closed session. To have a motion to adjourn to closed session? Motion. Second? Any discussion? Please call the roll.
McCaig?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Johnson? Rust?
Yes?
Griffin?
Yes.
Ware? Campbell? Wertz?
Yes. Motion passes. No action will be taken after the closed session. Thank you all for coming.